The great Ernest Hemingway was born on the 21st of July, 1899. He went on to write 7 novels, 6 short story collections, and 2 non-fiction pieces. Hemingway was bizarre, bold, and knew what he liked. He wanted to fight during World War II, but was rejected due to his terrible eyesight. But that didn't stop him, for he convinced one of the marshals into letting him drive an ambulance. He once bet a group of famous writers that he could write a story with only 6 words. And he did. Ernest Hemingway once published a recipe for apple pie. In fact, he had lots of recipes. He lived through diabetes, 2 plane crashes, a ruptured kidney, hepatitis, but the only thing he couldn't stop was himself. Ultimately, Hemingway shot himself twice in the head with his favorite gun. Born on the 7th of November, 1835, Mark Twain was one of 7 children. However, he lost 3 of his siblings during childhood. With very little formal schooling, Mark Twain spent evenings in libraries educating himself where school had left off. Before 13, he nearly drowned 9 documented times. He worked as a printer at 18 and traveled to many large US cities, which gave the young Twain a large perspective. Twain was only a steamboat pilot for 2 years. His career was cut short by the Civil War in 1861. In Harper's, his first article was mistakenly credited to Max Twain. Mark Twain suffered bouts of depression from years of constipation. Tesla shocked Twain to cure his constipation, and the two became lifelong friends following the event. Twain traveled the world as a lecturer for hire. Halley's Comet lights up the skies every 75 years. Twain was born following it. He predicted that he will go with the next Halley's Comet, and he sure did. Charles John Dickens was born on the 7th of February 1812 and died at the age of 58. He wrote many stories. Most quotable ones are Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, and Great Expectations. He started work at the age of 12 after his father was imprisoned for debt. He had a pet raven called Grib that he had stuffed when it died in 1841. The only novel by Dickens that includes the word kangaroo is David Copperfield. The Oxford English Dictionary credits Dickens for introducing 247 new words or usages into the language. In The Tale of Two Cities, he mentions husky chips of potato fried in some reluctant drops of oil, which is the earliest reference to potato chips. He always insisted on sleeping with his bed aligned north-south and his head pointing north. Dickens combed his hair a great deal, was afraid of bats, and hated the game croquet. Shakespeare married an older woman who was 3 months pregnant at the time. Shakespeare's parents were illiterate, and his children most certainly were. Nobody knows what Shakespeare did between 1585 and 1592. We probably don't spell Shakespeare's name correctly. People used to spell it many different ways, including Shakespeare introduced more than 3,000 words into the English language. Shakespeare's cause of death is unknown. Edgar Allan Poe's mother died when he was just 3 years old. Edgar gambled all the money that the Allens sent to him while he was at the University of Virginia. Soon, he was kicked out. Edgar enlisted in the army as Edgar A. Perry. Obsessed with cats, Edgar often wrote with a cat on his shoulder. He introduced the first recorded literary detective, The Murder in Rue Morgue. Poe is credited for defining the modern short story. The Raven was a challenge Edgar imposed upon himself. He wanted it to be a 100-line poem and ended up with 108 lines, which was apparently good enough for Edgar. In 1848, and after his wife's death in 1847, Edgar attempted to commit suicide.